Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to another week of the Passion Project. We took a little bit of a break for winter recess, and then we took last week off so that we had time to discuss and write about winter recess. But now we are back in full swing, and I can't wait to get started. Let's get started right now. So, just to quickly review what we've done so far in our passion project. We've been in this project for about 3 weeks now. And in week 1, we gave you an introduction to the passion project. I explained to you what a passion project looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. We talked about how a passion project is a way for you to introduce your joy to the world, your curiosities to the world. And it's an opportunity for you to really have a meaningful learning experience in which you're participating in something that brings you joy, something that's important to you, something that you're curious about. And it also gives you a platform to share that with your teachers, your friends, and other students. In week 2, you had an opportunity to make a list. You sat down and you thought about those things that bring you joy, those things that you're curious about, those things that you might want to visit for this project, those things that you might want to share with us. We will revisit that list next week when you make your pitch about your passion project, when you tell your teacher what your idea is, and then you'll be able to get started on it. And then in week 3, we viewed some podcasts. We took a look at kids just like you, kids who are enjoying their passion, exploring their curiosities. These kids are doing TED Talks and they're making podcasts and they're on YouTube and they're putting that information out for the world to see. And again, you're going to have an opportunity to do that with this project, but you're not going to put it out just on YouTube to everybody. You're going to put it out in a safe environment at Little Britain in our 2nd grade bubble. So let's take a look at what we're going to do today. I'm very excited about this. And I think you got a little taste of conducting interviews in one of our previous writing lessons. You'll recall I sat down and I interviewed Mrs. Martirano, and then I had you interview somebody for that writing lesson. That was a pretty fun thing, and you did such a beautiful job on that. And I think you're really going to enjoy this process of interviewing a grown-up for this week of the Passion Project. Now, keep in mind, this week you are going to interview a grown-up. You're going to talk to that grown-up about their passion. You're going to talk to them about their joy. Now, I understand today's Monday, and normally you do this assignment on Monday. However, you might need more time to complete this piece because you do need to engage with a grown-up. You do need to discuss it with a grown-up. And your grown-up has a very busy schedule because there's online learning going on, and your grown-up's trying to maintain your family life and also trying to maintain work life. So you might have to be a little bit patient with this, and it might take a little more time to get through this, but it's going to be a big payoff because it's really cool. Now, when you interview your grown-up, you need to, of course, ask their permission to interview them, and you need to let them know that you do need to record it for school. Those are 2 very important things because some grown-ups might not want to be on camera. They might not feel comfortable with that. And also you have to make sure that your grown-up has the time to do this project with you. Now, if you don't have a grown-up who's available in front of you, you could always call a grown-up on the phone, and you could use the audio piece on Seesaw to help you with that. For example, if you have a grandparent that lives really far away or an aunt or uncle and you want to call them on the phone and interview them, that's perfectly okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be on video. It can be audio. Remember, podcasts, when they first started, most of them were audio. Now, a lot of podcasts tend to have that visual piece. So anyway, ask your adult permission, make sure the schedule works for them, and make sure they're cool with being on video, on audio. So as we're talking to our adult, we're going to do this because it's going to help us with many aspects of creating our very own podcast. First of all, it's going to help you with your communication for your own podcast. It's going to inspire you to hear about others' joy. That's a really important piece because there's so much in this world to learn about, and it's very exciting to hear things that other people are interested in and to be exposed to new and different things. Sometimes you might even discover your passion by somebody else, by being influenced by somebody else. You're also going to think about how you would answer these questions. And again, this is all part of a process to learn about other people and their joy and things that they're curious about. But it's also going to help you in coming up with your own ideas for your own podcast. And of course, I'm going to give you some questions that you can use as a base, and you can think of any questions that I may have left out that you might want to ask. Let's take a look at what our interview is going to look like. Now, it's very helpful. Think about when you're in school. If your teacher gives you an activity to do where you have to answer a bunch of questions about something that you read. Normally, your teacher will say, okay, boys and girls, today we're going to read this book, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about this book, and let's look at those questions, right? So we'll take a look at those questions first. Same thing with when you're doing Scholastic News. We always say, look at the questions. You can see what the questions are and go back and reread for that information. Well, that's kind of similar to what we do with an interview. When you are sitting down with your grown-up, you may want to give them the questions first to take a look at them. So that way they can really think about their answers. They can really think about what they want to say to you. They can think about what they want to tell you. And then when you're sitting down doing the actual interview, it might take a couple times to practice it. It might take a couple times to get it right, and that's okay. Make sure you allow yourself enough time for that. But as you're asking those questions, make sure you're using your loud teaching voice, kind of like how my voice sounds loud right now. Use that loud teaching voice. Maintain eye contact with your grown-up who you're talking to, but also make sure you're looking at the camera every once in a while too, because you want to keep your audience engaged in this interview. You want to keep your audience engaged in this podcast, right? You want them to be engaged in the content. You want them to come back and want more and want to see more, right? So make sure you have a clear, loud voice. Make sure you have eye contact with your grown-up and the camera. And also make sure you have that level of engagement. Make sure everybody is engaged in this process to make it more exciting, right? Let's take a look at these questions. Question number 1 says, what is one thing or activity that really brings you joy? Number 2 says, why does it bring you joy? Why are you so passionate about it? And keep in mind, sometimes when you ask somebody question number 1, when you say, what is one thing or activity that really brings you joy? They might actually give you the answer to number 2 as they're answering number 1, and that's okay. Number 3, how did you learn or get into this passion? Number 4, do you share this passion with anybody else? And number 5, would you recommend others to pursue or participate in this passion as well? So boys and girls, these are the 5 questions that we came up with for you to ask your grown-up. You might have some other questions up here, and of course, you can ask those questions. When you are asking the questions, it might be helpful to have them written down so that you can remember the questions as you're asking them. And as I said, so you can show them to your grown-up before you ask those questions. Sometimes it's helpful. I know when I look at my notes, you may notice sometimes I look at just my notes. I have it all on a piece of paper. Sometimes little note cards can be helpful, and you could put the questions on little note cards ahead of time. If you've watched interviews on TV, you might see somebody conducting an interview and they're going through little note cards. So that can be a helpful way to keep your thoughts and your questions organized as you go through the interview. These questions will be listed on Seesaw for you to go ahead and copy. I will also have an example of an interview in your Seesaw lesson for you to view prior to conducting your very own interview with your grown-up. All right, boys and girls, it's time to enter your genius hour. Your genius hour is the time that you devote to this activity. So find a grown-up to speak to about their passion and about the things that make them curious. Ask them permission to interview them. Make sure you show them the questions ahead of time. Then get those questions written down for you to use during that interview. Maybe put them on a piece of paper like I have here, or put them on note cards. Make sure you view the example that I gave you so you kind of know how an interview should look and should feel, and then go ahead and conduct your interview. Remember, this might take a little bit of time because your grown-ups are very busy. So don't worry about trying to have to get it done today, but definitely get it done before next Monday, because next Monday, you're going to be able to tell me your very own idea for your passion project, and then you're going to jump right in and get started on it. All right, boys and girls, be creative and have fun doing it.